Hello, thank you for joining me for another Dear Sam Help Horsemanship Series. Today I wanted to talk about the things that can happen when we remove expectation. And this might be a little bit more of a story teaching session, but I really wanted to share it because, as I was saying to my client, I wish more people had the opportunity of these learning experiences where they allowed the horse to have an opinion and to believe that opinion and to learn to work with the opinion and to be able to help the horse work through whatever it was that may be of concern, maybe creating anticipation, maybe creating a certain degree of pressure. And so I'm going to share about a recent client and his horses that he arrived with and what happened today after, I think today was day 5. Or day 4 together, excuse me. So I had someone who contacted me who's a long rider, meaning he's going to do long distance, meaning all the way across the United States, and he has 2 horses. And there was a bit of struggle in some areas after a few year break because of COVID and so on and other things. And so now that he's back with his horses, someone was suggesting maybe he seek out some help, and so he found his way to me. And when we started, as is often the case with many people, I'm told, this horse is, really good. He's easy to catch. He's easy to this. He's really great. He does exactly what I want. The other one may be a little bit more leery, not so sure about catching. And so this is kind of the starting place of the client thinking that they've had a certain degree of success and they just need some refinement. And the challenging thing as a professional is when you see horses where you recognize that the behaviors you're seeing are a result of numerous things contributing to this unwanted outcome or this unwanted behavior. Most horses are not doing things aggressively. It is really out of a form of self-preservation. So the fast, the dramatic, the potentially dangerous behaviors are all coming from that horse's highly anticipative, highly reactive state, just in the form of self-preservation because of whatever previous experiences with the human has caused them to be on the defense. And so initially, as there are unwanted behaviors, they may not feel overwhelming. They may not look big and dramatic and scary, but the underlying source of them is a massive problem or hole in the horse's education. And without filling that hole, the more that we go to ask of the horse, the increased potential of bigger, dramatic, potentially dangerous, unwanted moments are. Now, if you think about it, if you're going to take several horses out into the wilderness in encountering numerous scenarios, whether it's wildlife, whether it's other people in the mountains, whether it's traffic, whether it's all these unexpected potential situations, if you're doing long distance riding, we need to have horses that are mentally available, mentally adaptable, and physically reasonable in their behavior. Without those pieces, basically we're increasing the chances of dangerous and unwanted scenarios where we and the horse can get hurt. And so in looking at these horses that arrived, if anybody had seen the horses, there was nothing scary about them. There was nothing big and dramatic about them. But there was definitely an over-reliance on each other. So when you see horses in a healthy herd, there is still a spatial distance that gives some personal space within the movement of those horses in that group. When you see horses that are insecure, they often are standing oddly close to each other, almost touching. They will often run into each other. They will often physically push on each other when they're feeling concerned or anticipative or fearful or reactive. And so there are subtle behaviors where some people go, oh, look how cute that is. They're so close together. And as I look at the behavior, I go, there's not a whole lot of confidence here. And watching each of these horses, who both lacked a certain degree of confidence, one of them, when he was unsure, would shut down and physically lock up his body in physical resistance. Well, to most people, they translate the lack of movement as the horse being okay, rather than realizing that there was a brewing mental anticipation and physical tension, and then when too much or something unexpected happens, the horse becomes overwhelmed and all of a sudden explodes. With the other horse, he had gently chaotic movement all the time, meaning he would offer to be caught, but he would push into your personal space. He would try and take over, and during the haltering, during the leading, during standing still, it was always this little bit of excessive chaotic movement. Now again, it didn't look scary, and yet the chaos physically that we were seeing is a reflection of the horse's mental anticipation, because he lacked the confidence to be mentally present in the moment of where he physically was at, and instead was trying to take in everything going on around him, again to take over and protect himself and create a safe place. So when you have these two personality horses who are dealing with the same root cause but in very different physical behaviors, it seems like you have two very separate things going on. And yet, as we peeled back the layers during this last week, we were able to start at the very beginning as far as how does it feel when you just head out to the pasture. And it was such a wonderful opportunity, and I have to say a huge part of this is the human students' availability and willingness to learn and to absorb new information and to try and to let go of all of the things they may have done in the past or think that they have accomplished with their horse, to just be present in the moment, to be able to start to see all of the ways that their horse was communicating that despite their past experiences, the horse was really not that okay with any of them, that the horse's confidence had not been increased, but instead had been diminished because of them. And this is a struggle for a lot of people, and a lot of the limitations in what I can do in helping people be successful with their horse doesn't come from the amount of change that the horse offers. It comes from the limited availability from the human to let go of the past, irrelevant of what they think was accomplishment, which is usually task accomplishment, versus thinking about quality experiences with the horse, to get that person to a place to where they can be able to be available and present in the moment to help their horse build the confidence and reawaken the curiosity, which then replaces the fear and reactive and dramatic unwanted behavior. So this week was really great because we were able to peel back these layers and recognize behaviors within the owner and what was going on, recognize the horse's coping mechanisms, their patterns, and as they let go of those, they began to be able to search, meaning that when something was asked of them, instead of trying to physically leave and get away or avoid the human or hide in the trees or get obnoxious and bouncy with each other, that they could try offering different responses that were soft, thoughtful, and reasonable. And as this progression of these conversations evolved into haltering and leading and changing how the horse felt about physical pressure of things touching them, spatial pressure of the human being nearby, by the time we got to today, day 4, we were finishing up the first session, and this session was happening in a pasture that's about 1.5 acres with trees and woods and lots of places that the horses could go. One horse that wasn't being worked with wound up coming over and physically lying down. Now, this was a horse that was the pushy one, the bouncy one, the one that was always offering excessive movement. And I have to remind people that what you see in one horse when it's near another horse reflects what the other horse who's being worked with is experiencing emotionally. And so it's really cool if you have the opportunity to observe things like this. And so the horse that was not being worked with wound up laying down. When I say laying down, I mean he laid down flat out, like when the neighbors call and worry if, the horse is okay in the yard type of thing. And as we finished the session with the horse who was, when he was unsure, would lock up his body and carry a brace and avoid being haltered and always be looking away to sort of what I call the backup plan to protect himself and move away if necessary. When the owner took off the halter with that horse and the horse stood quietly. There was none of the normal moving off and having to get away like the session is done, but the horse could just stay with the human. And then as he just stood there and I had him turn around so that the human was looking towards me, so he was creating no pressure towards the horse he had just finished working with laid down. And I'm going to add a little video clip in here following this of what it looked like. But it was such a beautiful moment because it wasn't about, oh, how cool the horse laid down. It was that these horses were reflecting this total mindset shift and the intentional shift to where these conversations that have been unfolding over the last few days, and even though the horses struggled, and even though it was a bit of an emotional roller coaster for them to let go of their old patterns and coping mechanisms, that because we persisted and helped them get to a place where they felt mentally safe and physically soft, the degree in which they could let down their continuous, typically on guard postures, behaviors, mental anticipation, was to the point to where they offered the most vulnerable position of all, which was lying down. So many times when I do things and I have to peel back the layers and I try and help people understand why it is so crucial that foundation in that horse's education and understanding encourages him to remain curious rather than trying to train for obedience and submission and making the horse comply, is because certainly in the case of this particular client, if he's going out into the real world where so many things will be out of his control, where his environment will continuously be changing and challenging him and his relationship with his horses, he needs to have horses that are completely trusting that no matter what comes up, that their priority is checking in with the human because they associate safety with the human, versus that they're always in anticipation of how to protect themselves and how to get away. And if more people were able to first be there to support their horse, to work through things, the whole relationship could shift. And yet so many of these wonderful and amazing moments that are completely unexpected that can happen during the interaction with equines never actually come to fruition, because the human has the agenda, the have-tos, the time limitations, the expectations because of the past, or because of financially investing in a horse, expecting it to be one thing and then it turns out it's not, rather than saying the priority needs to be, how do I help my horse? And when I help my horse offers the ideal that I wanted in the first place. So thank you for joining me. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'll see you next time.